Good evening, everybody. Could we come to order, please? And could I start tonight's proceedings with apologies for absence?
Councillor, no apologies received.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest in matters before us this evening? If not, could we approve the minutes of the last Cabinet meeting on pages 1 to 14? Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And to confirm that items of business marked Part 1 will be considered in public, and that items of business marked Part 2 will be considered in private. The public reports are reports 5 to 10, and the reports that we will hear in private are reports 11 to 13. With that, if we start with agenda item 5 on page 15, Hillingdon Local Safeguarding Children's Board Annual Report 2018-2019. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Leader. This is the last report in this format that we'll receive because the Local Safeguarding Children Board structure has changed to new local safeguarding arrangements. But Cabinet members will be familiar, as will a lot of councillors, with this report and its format having come as a regular thing, updating us on the work of the LSCB. I think it's appropriate to minute our thanks to Steve Ashley, who's been chairing our LSCB for the last few years. With the change in arrangements, he's moved on to pastures new. Essentially, this report summarises where we are today in respect of safeguarding issues in the borough. We do continue to see good progress on the emerging issues that Hillingdon faces, and also monitoring very actively new trends. And the example of that, of course, is what's happening with knife crime across the capital, seeking to make sure that we are doing everything we can with our partners to ensure that young people in the borough are safe. So with that, I move the recommendation on page 15, and I'll do my best to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? If not, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 6, page 59, Hillingdon Safeguarding Adults Board Annual Report 2018-19. Councillor Cawthorne.
Thank you, Leader. I move the report. The report charts the progress and work against the Board's predetermined priorities over the course of the last year, which include domestic abuse and modern slavery, as well as reviews of pathways and processes and operational guidance to make sure we get the best possible multi-agency responses to safeguarding alerts. And I would also echo Councillor Simmons' comments about Steve Ashley, who similarly chaired the Adults Board. Now, as with children's, the safeguarding structure and arrangements are changing in a way which I think will make much better use of stakeholders' time and ensure a much sharper focus on the emerging issues from practice to help inform action planning. So the most senior stakeholders will meet by exception and deal with unresolved issues, and they'll be supported underneath that by an operational board dealing with the day-to-day matters, which I think makes a lot of sense. So these new safeguarding arrangements will come to us for sign-off shortly. I very much look forward to seeing them delivering on the ground and making an impact for our residents. And with that, I move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation is that we note the report. If there are no questions, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 7, page 85, Statement of Gambling Policy to be recommended to Council. Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Leader. I move the recommendations at the bottom of page 85. We went out to consultation. We've had some responses. We've given consideration to that. And Appendix A on page 91 confirms the amendments that we have made to the Council's gambling policy, most of which are to just bring things up to date in terms with current legislation or current terminology. So there's no fundamental change from the gambling policy that we have already adopted. But as you said, it now goes to full Council for final ratification. I move.
Any questions? If not, recommendations agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 8, Council Budget 2019-20 Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring for month 5. Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Leader. Well, as you have rightly pointed out, this is capital for month 5, and that means August. There are 4 recommendations at the bottom of page 153 and the top of page 154, and there is a further 5th recommendation on the addendum sheet which has been passed out. The important thing to note is that the current projected net underspend is 512,000, which is an improvement of 138,000 on the previous month 4. So this is a continuing good news story. We're still relatively early. We're not quite at the halfway point in the financial year as far as this budgeting report is concerned, and therefore that is a sound place to find ourselves. I think also, I know you'll go into some detail on these recommendations probably when I've finished, Leader, but I think the other important thing to note is in capital terms, we are currently projecting an underspend of 19.6 million odd, but that is almost entirely to do with rephasing of project expenditure, where it sort of will roll over into the next financial year. So there's nothing to concern ourselves with that. That's good news. Also, that projects are moving forward in that way. This is a good news story, as I've said. It shows we're making steps in the right direction. We're delivering our services, and at that point, I will move the recommendations and leave you to carry on, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bianco. Recommendation 1, to note the budget position at August, as outlined in Table 1. That's on page 156, where, as Councillor Bianco indicated, the underspend at the end of month 5 is £512,000. And in paragraph 13, you will see that leaves us expected balances at the year end of just over £33 million, which is a strong position to be in. But we also have, further in the report, you can see that we have 825 in unused contingency for things that may come up. We've got unallocated priority growth. So it really is a good position, and a number of other councils will be really pleased to have that position. Recommendation 2, to note the Treasury Management Update at August 19, Appendix C, pages 191 to 192. And as usual, whilst the detail of interest earned and paid is there, the important thing is paragraph 152, that there were no breaches of the prudential indicators or non-compliance with the Treasury management policy and practices during the period under review. Recommendation 5, the continued delegation to myself and the Chief Executive to approve consultancy and agency assignments for the coming month, and those in existence at the present time are showed at Appendix G on page 193. Recommendation 4, to approve the grant of £165,000 from the Special Provision Capital Fund to Hedgewood Primary School in order to enable the school to increase accommodation for children with social, emotional and mental health and children with autism, with the associated capital release of that said £165,000. This is part of a grant, the Special Provision Grant of £4,905,000 that we've received from the government. And the additional recommendation on the addendum sheet is a change to some of the charges that we make relating to temporary street trading, pitch fees and to shopfront displays. This is to bring them in line with our 90% of what neighbouring councils charge. We do find from time to time that we are somewhat well away from what our neighbours have proceeded with. So these charges will bring us up to the 90% position in both those cases. There will be some consultation as is required on this, and that's dealt with at recommendation 5C. So with those comments, if there are no other questions, are the recommendations 1 to 5 agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 9, page 197, School Capital Programme Update. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Leader. This is the periodic update on our Schools Capital Programme. Members will be very familiar with the detail, so I won't go over the history too much of it. The thing that is probably new and of significance is the advanced or more advanced stage of development of our programme for SEND provision. There's now a great deal more clarity from central government about what the funding position is for the capital side of that, with additional money announced to come to Hillingdon in the recent past. And this gives a bit of an update on where we are with the expansion of our SEND places which clearly are an area that we've seen growth in as much as we have in mainstream pupils. So with those comments, I'll read the recommendation on page 197.
Is that agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 10, page 205, planning obligations, quarterly financial monitoring report. Councillor Barrows.
Thank you, Leader. And instead of being the usual print on the A4 size, we do have them in A3 now to make it easier for everybody to follow. As you will see, we still get the monies from the developments within Hillingdon, which our officers negotiate very well, the 106 and 278 monies. We currently hold 14.8 million. Of this, 4.1 is allocated or earmarked for projects, and 3.7 relates to funds that at the moment we're currently unable to spend directly, and that's because of various issues to do with the development being completed. When the development gets completed, so much money can then be spent in different areas. Generally goes towards highways, education, etc., school places. So we've got a residual balance of the 6.8 million shown there. You'll see in quarter one, we actually received additional income of 332,000, and we spent 318,000 already. So officers still get good 106 and 278 agreements on behalf of our residents to ensure that, yes, the development does go ahead within Hillingdon, but it's controlled and the planning obligations are met by the developers so that our residents do get the benefit of having highways and school places, GP places, etc., paid for by developments in Hillingdon. I move the recommendations as shown, with the usual caveat that my Cabinet colleagues now look at their A3 size document, and within their areas, if there are any issues that they think monies aren't being spent quick enough or they just want clarification on, they can contact me and I will get those answers for them. With that said, I move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Barrows. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We move to part 2.